At a time when the entire world is fighting the COVID infection, in India we are trying to flatten the curve. We are trying to ensure that the infection doesn't get any further out of hand. The armed forces are very actively involved as usual in defending our frontiers. The Indian Air Force is doing that, monitoring the frontiers on the Pakistan front, on the China front as well. Joining us now, the Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Bhadauria. Thanks so very much for being with us.
Welcome.
Sir, the Ladakh situation you would have read about, you would know about. How bad is it as far as a Chinese presence is there, particularly from an Air Force standpoint?
No, we are monitoring the situation. We are aware of the activities there, and whatever measures are necessary, those are being taken. As far as the Air Force is concerned, their Air Force presence is largely routine as far as fighters and their deployment on the main operating bases across are concerned. So, we are monitoring whatever actions are required, those are being taken.
What about helicopter activity in that region?
Helicopter activity has seen a spurt in the recent past, and that again we have taken measures whatever is required in those circumstances as per our SOP. So, there is nothing to worry about unduly, it is nothing that has not been noted.
And in terms of helicopter activity, is it helicopter activity for them to put their soldiers on the ground, or is it reconnaissance activity, or what exactly is it?
No, I would not like to go into it. Suffice to say that we know what is happening and necessary action is being taken.
Sure. Sir, there was also a report of some airspace violations on the Uttarakhand front some time back. Is that another area that you are particularly vigilant on in recent times, perhaps more than normally?
We monitor all our areas as far as AD issues are concerned, and any such activity close to LAC gets monitored and gets responded to. So, all these activities we are aware.
And sir, there were some reports which suggested that we had moved some Sukhois in the direction of that area, the Galwan area or the Pangong Lake area in the recent past in response to some Chinese activity over there. Can you shed some light on that, if at all that happened in the way it's been reported?
You know, we have many air defense aircraft on duty in the area that we are talking about, and I wouldn't like to go into whether Su-30 was moved or whatever. Whenever there is activity close to the LAC, we as per our SOP deploy the aircraft to monitor. That was done, and there is nothing there that we don't know what's happening.
Right. And sir, in terms of Chinese activity on the Tibetan plateau over the last few years, we've seen an induction of new aircraft, new technology, new sensors. Have they ramped up their presence in an area which concerns us substantially in, let us say, the last year and a half or so?
Not last year and a half, over the last many years, last let's say 7 to 8 years, there has been continuous improvement in their infrastructure and their deployment levels. Over the last year, it has been more or less similar. Whatever deployments we saw last year is the same almost this year. Their activity is routine as far as fighters and other deployments on these bases is concerned. Not to talk about some increase in helicopter activity close to LAC, which you mentioned. So, their basis, we are aware of what infrastructure, what has come up, the kind of flying they do, and that has been noted. We have taken our own measures.
Mm-hmm. And sir, a lot of the technology which they are deploying now, for example, the J-20 fighter with stealth technology, the F-10 fighter which has come a long way since its development, even the JF-17 which Pakistan operates, from a technology standpoint, have they upped the curve for which India needs to respond?
You know, China has put in a lot of money and effort towards their development indigenous in terms of technology, in terms of fighter aircraft design and development, and you are aware of the results, their JF-17 exports, their J-10 and J-20 induction. So, in terms of stealth, they have reached a certain level. In terms of engine technology in particular, they have succeeded to a great extent, and that needs to be noted seriously. In terms of electronics, they have improved tremendously. So, these are areas that they have improved in the recent years, in the last decade or so, and I think it is important. That is why we have changed our track, and the renewed impetus towards indigenization, because in the long term if we have to build yourself to counter any such adversary or any such level of technology, it has to be indigenous development. And our emphasis on indigenous, one of the reasons is this, that we need to develop our own industry, our own ability to design fighters of the technology that is required. And engine is another area that we need to look at seriously in our industry, and that is being done.
Yeah, and so just about the engine itself, the Kaveri engine didn't meet with the success that you had expected it to. So in terms of indigenous development of engines for whatever platform it may be, where do we stand presently and what are you hopeful of?
Kaveri did not succeed fully, but it did have its own results in terms of successful dry runs, in terms of the level, technology level that the industry reached, that the DRDO reached. So it's wrong to say that it is fully unsuccessful. It had its merits and it had its achievements, but for the target it did not meet, and therefore it wasn't suitable to deploy on the LCA. Engine technology is complex, it's not easy, and that's an area which is being looked at seriously by DRDO. Yeah. We've had many discussions. This is an area that needs to be followed up for successful development of an engine in the industry.
Yeah, and sir, Pakistan recently, after the Handwara incident, I believe had a lot of air activity as well. Is that the case? Could you tell us a little bit about what you saw in terms of their caps that they were flying, combat air patrols or anything else?
No, large part of their air activity was related to exercise they were doing, some of it towards their own training, and some unusual things that we noticed, we took some measures. So all their activity is monitored and we are aware of what they are doing.
What unusual activity was there that you speak about?
Like you mentioned, that if they have taken any defensive measures in terms of post terrorist incident in the valley. So there are issues that we monitor, and there were areas that we thought that they had taken some measures defensive in nature. So that is a usual activity.
But what areas would these be? That,
no, I would not like to go into details. Something that they do in terms of their own maybe ORP state or alert states.
Right.
We do monitor.
Yeah. So they've also been stepping up infrastructure at their airports in POK, air bases in POK. For example, I believe Skardu also there has been some enhanced activity. What are you seeing in terms of air base development on the Pakistani or the POK side?
Skardu, there has been a fair amount of development of infrastructure. Again, we are aware of the details, and our reading is that they are wanting to convert it into a main operating base, which will happen sometime in the future. So we have taken note and we have taken our measures that are required for such a development.
One of the platforms that they've got from China is the JF-17. There are different variants of that aircraft also coming online now in substantial numbers. How do you assess those inductions, and what are we doing to counter that? There are ASA radars which are being developed in China, unclear if it's been deployed by Pakistan, but there is a sense that that would come along at some stage as well. So in terms of a platform with substantial numbers, what sort of a challenge does it represent for us?
In technology, it is equivalent somewhere around LCA. In many respects, LCA is better. So in terms of technology, in terms of capability, we are fully aware. We are also aware of the improvements that they are planning on the platform, and as it goes along, we will see what success they achieve. In terms of our own response to it, we have our own post structure planning process, and it is being catered for.
The Rafales coming 2 months later, that's something very close to your heart. You were so closely involved with the entire induction process. One of the points which I believe is that you aren't going to wait very much longer after the Rafales come in. You are fully prepped to operationally use these aircraft within weeks perhaps, or days even, if necessary.
We will have 4 aircraft by end of July. There's been a bit of delay because of this COVID situation. Some of the training got hampered, some supply chain got disrupted. So by end July we should have the first 4, and thereafter by August these 4 will be operational. Our pilots are trained and we will integrate them with other fighter fleets that we have.
Right.
There will be no delay.
Sure, that's great to hear that you're acquiring these aircraft up and running, as it were. MMRCA 2 is a requirement, 114 aircraft, which is absolutely essential for the IAF, and yet there is this huge drive on indigenization. How do these two work together?
Our current focus is on 83 LCA.
Right.
We are already behind time on it. Actually, we should have concluded this earlier, but there were many issues to do with the conclusion of the CNC, etc. And all those issues have been resolved. We are close to completing the CNC. It's in final stages of process in MOD. And our entire focus is to get this to the contract stage so that the industry, the LCA setup starts moving. The 40 production will stop in the next 2 years, and by then this should come up. So that is the immediate highest priority. Also, along with LCA, we have to give the visibility to the industry and to the DRDO as to what next on this program, the LCA itself and its related development into the future. And that is where LCA Mark II comes in, which we have clearly articulated our requirements to DRDO and ADA. AMCA we have cleared with DRDO as the long-term 5th generation aircraft induction plan of Air Force. That again is a huge decision we have taken and given the visibility to the DRDO and industry. So our attention at the moment is to sort out the LCA and give this plan push. On the MRFA side, what you mentioned, 114, it's an important project because it's in different class in terms of combat capability, in terms of technology, in terms of the manufacturing status, again technology and practices wise. The changes that we are looking for in this is with the developments that have taken place and the support and reforms towards private sector involvement, towards MSMEs. We are firstly going to have it fully make in India, and we are going to look for almost complete transfer of technology in terms of the niche technologies, in terms of critical technologies that are concerned of fighter of this class. So this will bring in another level of capability of fighter manufacturing and technologies. Right. But it would be make in India, and it would be with the TOT.
Right.
So this is something that is in process. It is being analyzed, and with these reforms that are in place, we will finalize the way forward. So that is something which is happening in parallel.
Where are you in terms of picking the aircraft that you would like?
On MRFA?
On MMRC.
We don't have the option to pick. Once we finalize our plan, once we finalize the plan,
but you would drop those aircraft which don't match your technical specifications. So is there a process that
no, that process is on at the moment, and thereafter once we finalize, we'll go to the MOD and for the AON, and that's when we will announce what our plan is.
And when would that be? I mean, in terms of time,
it would get a little delayed in the current situation, yes. And our focus primarily we have to sort out. There are budget issues, but this is something which is much into the planning stage. It will take time to reach anywhere close to contract stage. So the parallel process will continue.
So are you looking at a year, or are you looking at more?
We will continue to work at the fastest speed possible to resolve it in parallel.
Right. So in your previous answers, you kept using the word industry, and you're talking about domestic industry. For anything that the IAF does, whether it's MMRCA built in India or for LCA Tejas or AMCA, industry, by which I assume you mean private players and government players, the DRDO establishment, they really have to come to the table, right, in terms of manufacturing quality and speed. How is your expansion in the future linked entirely to industry in India stepping up?
This is an important issue that you've raised. While we emphasize a lot on indigenization, and we have already finalized the projects on which we are indigenizing, and not only on the aircraft side, but on the radar side, on the electronics, whole lot of weapons. It's very important for this scenario change to sink into the industry, be it DRDO, be it DPSUs, be it private sector, MSMEs, and it's a real challenge for them to work together and come up to speed to be able to deliver. And it is not simple. The aviation industry is complicated, the technologies are complicated, And I think there is a need for all these partners to be really working in sync to be able to deliver on all these projects. So we will see a lot of change happening in the aviation industry, and if they play it right, I think this is the time that you can change the entire aviation sector in the Indian industry. There is a lot of potential with the reforms in place, 74% FDI, the support to the private sector, MSMEs support that they've got. They are looking for demand. We have the demand, and they need to have their plan of action to deliver.
Sure. So the finance minister a few days back said that a list needed to be prepared on items which are banned from import. What areas specific to the IAF do you believe we have reached a certain maturity on the basis of which we no longer need to import?
You know, we had a list of such a list, and that's being revised, and it's being a lot of items are being added in that. And in terms of indigenization, we have come a long way in the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years. Radars in particular, there are a lot of successful projects. So radars, there will be hardly any need to import, be it ground radars. In terms of ISA radar, there's been a lot of success stories on the Embraer. The AI radar is work in progress. In terms of trainer aircraft, HTT-40 is now on the verge of success.
Yeah.
So any trainer.
You've flown it also.
I've flown it. Yes, yes.
Does I mean, as such an experienced test pilot yourself, what does it feel like? Do you think
No,
our
it was
young
good.
pilots would gain?
It is as good as any contemporary aircraft, and that's why we have supported it now and given the initial requirement of 70 aircraft straight away, and that is being progressed. So trainer of this class we will not import.
Right.
Similarly, some areas of weapons which are getting successful we will not import. Wherever areas in fighters technologies that are successful, those will be on that list. So there will be a very significant increase in the list of negative imports.
Sure. So the Astra missile is so key for so many of your platforms, the Sukhoi 30, possibly the upgraded MiG-29 as well. What is the future of this, and where have we come from a technology standpoint?
Astra is a successful project of DRDO, and we have already taken some steps to modify some of our aircraft to carry this missile. The trial is already successful, so we are going to place order very soon. In terms of technology, it is absolutely contemporary. So this is a hugely successful project of DRDO, and I only hope that the production facilities that need to be set up are done at a rapid pace to meet our requirement, because it is something that is important. The more rapidly they set up the process and manufacture and supply to us, we will be able to stop import of any such class of missiles straight away in parallel. So that's why I say the industry coming up to this challenge is very, very important.
Yeah, and the range of the missile is something you will increase as well, because we've got a certain mastery of rocket engines for missiles indigenously. That's a big development also from a technology standpoint.
Yes, it is. Once you sort out the guidance and the seeker, there is a lot that is possible in terms of propulsion, in terms of increasing ranges, and I'm sure all that will get done.
Yeah. So there was an announcement recently. It's not so much an announcement, it's a proposal of bringing in young people, perhaps professionals, into the army for a period of 3 years. Then Anand Mahindra has responded to that, saying that if they come off 3 years of experience, then we would look at them and consider them for a job. Do you believe this needs to be extended to the IAF as well?
I'm aware Army is quite keen on it. We have looked at it closely, but our short service commission scheme is working well. And for the Air Force, the amount of time and money you spent in training is more. So the training itself is costly. The training period is longer, and for us a 3-year period kind of solution will not be that good.
Right.
So we are not for it for the Air Force as such, but Army is very keen and they have their good reasons for it, and we are hoping that they will succeed.
Yeah. Sir, the CDS recently mentioned that as part of integration, there needs to be greater sharing of air assets. For example, he's spoken in the past also about how Navy aircraft were used during the Doklam crisis. What are your views on this? For example, the Navy also operates MiG-29 aircraft, a similar parts bin. They have only one aircraft carrier now. In a situation like this, do you see the possibility of using some of their assets, for example, MiG-29s, for other operations?
Of course, of course. There is no problem in such integration, and we already have plans for such integration. If they are not deployed at sea and they are available on land, they will get integrated into operations along with the Air Force. It is fully possible, it must be done, and in terms of our integration, the way we are going about, it will only increase. So I don't see any problem in this.
And so, in terms of integration itself, what are your views? For example, another point mentioned by the CDS was integration of reconnaissance assets, for example. The Army uses them, UAVs, the Air Force uses them, the Navy uses them as well. So in terms of a complete picture with combined assets, how much of a benefit is it for the armed forces, not specifically one force?
No, I think that is the bottom line in all that we are doing towards integration. We must integrate our assets, we must synergize it to use it effectively, efficiently, lower the costs, be it maintenance, be it operations. For example, on the UAVs, we are already discussing a combined ops room, and everybody gets get their requirement directly from there. It will be manned by all the forces concerned. So there is a huge scope of integrating, especially in the air assets, and this is one of the areas we are working at.
Right.
It's one of the very important focus areas.
Sure, sir. So one final question, COVID, as you would have to be very careful about all of your air warriors, just to ensure that they aren't infected, because then facilities get potentially affected as well. Before we talk about how you've contributed to the battle, how has this been a concern for you to ensure that your own men and women stay safe?
It's been a concern, and we put in our measures right up front and very, very seriously, because right from the beginning our aircraft started to get deployed for COVID related tasks, be it flying in passengers from outside, and as the lockdown happened, we knew that our assets would be utilized. So we had the measures in place, and we explained it in detail, and the importance of social distancing, the masks, and increase in knowledge and the discipline to do it. So we concentrated on this a lot. As far as response from our people is concerned, I think they've done well. We continue to operate the transport fleet and the helicopter fleet throughout. They managed it extremely well. They completed all the tasks. We didn't have a single COVID case in any of these air crew, ground crew, all the supporting crew. And we were able to do a lot of tasks towards COVID. Right. So apart from handling our routine air defense alert, our combat worthiness, our ability to keep the pilots current, so all those actions were in parallel. Right. But we were seriously planning to see that we don't get affected by COVID.
Right. Chief, it's always a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much for sparing time with us.